Hello, I'm C. Edward Baldwin, and this is the Ink Report. Yesterday, I completed part one of my two-part series, Monday Morning QB, What Sandra Bland Could Have Done. In fact, I was editing part two when the news broke of the indictment of the officer who shot and killed Samuel DuBose during a traffic stop. And as I watched the body cam from the officer's body cam, I was editing the part two, and I had to stop what I was doing. I was really I was emotionally torn at what I was watching, because basically Samuel was doing what he was supposed to do, and he ended up shot and killed. And so I stopped my edit of the conclusion of my Sandra Bland series and put my response up, put a video up about the Samuel DuBose murder. And I'm glad I did, because I knew that once I went to sleep and I was going to wake up the next day and I was going to be a little more rational. And I wanted that raw emotion caught. And I wanted to share that raw emotion, because that's the anger behind the Black Lives Matter movement. That's the anger we feel. Sort of like these people here are feeling about the murder of Cecil, the lion. That's how we feel about the murder of innocent blacks during traffic stops. And so I wanted to capture that emotion. And I knew that if I waited till today, I would still be upset, but I would be a little calmer. And I didn't want to be calmer. I didn't necessarily want you guys to see calm. I wanted you to see upset, raw emotion. And so that's why I uploaded that video. And really, I did not want to complete my series on Sandra Bland, what she could have done. And as I stated in part one, the reason for the series was not to second guess Sandra Bland. Everyone knows how, if you watch my previous blog posts, you know how I feel in reference to that. But I wanted to do a series in an effort to keep future Sandra Bland incidents from happening. And the Samuel DuBose incident sort of knocked me off track a little bit. But again, I slept on it, and I want to go ahead and complete part two of my series on Sandra Bland, Monday Morning QB. But I will say this. I would suggest everything that I'm getting, what you're getting ready to see, I still adhere to. But I think that for your own safety, you might want to consider installing a dash cam. Because I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to trust that body cams might not be dysfunctional, or the patrol car's dash cam might all of a sudden break down, or somehow become destroyed, sort of like Tom Brady's cell phone, where the text messages get destroyed with the phone. I'm not implying anything. I'm just saying that you might want to consider installing a dash camera in your car, and they are very affordable. And most of the ones people install, they like to install so they're looking out toward traffic to record traffic accidents and whatnot. But you can get some that can kind of swivel. And so I would suggest, if you had one of those installed and you got pulled over during a traffic stop, that you turn it around so it's facing you and the officer, so it can record your interaction with the officer, and then you follow the steps of the script that I referred to repeatedly before. And I think going forward, if we do that enough, then maybe one day the behavior that we're trying to encourage by use of the dash cams would be second nature. That the officers, each and every officer, would do that each and every time. Because there are some good officers out there, and we need police officers, but there's most certainly some ones that, one, probably shouldn't even be on the force, and two, at the very least, need additional training. So, dash cam, follow the rules of the script. Here's part 2 of Sandra Bland, Monday Morning QB, what Sandra Bland could have done. This video blog post here is part 2 of Monday Morning QB, what Sandra Bland could have done. Part 1 is out. It's not a prerequisite that you see part 1 before you see part 2. But in part 1, I do use myself as a backdrop for part 2. In part 1, I kind of go through some of my past interactions with police. But part 2 is what I really want you to see. Taking the Sandra Bland tape and going through it step by step from the beginning to show what you should do if you find yourself in the same situation, so that you might have a different outcome than what Sandra had. I'm going to read something here. This is off the Winston-Salem Police Department website, and it's just a nice summary of what you should do when you are stopped by the police at a traffic stop. So I'm just going to read their article here verbatim. Okay, now when a police officer signals you to pull over, this is part of the script that I've referred to in my previous blog posts. What you want to do is pull over as far to the right as safely possible. This allows the officer to move more safely, or walk more safely to your car, or more safely walk to your car. You want to turn off the ignition. If it's at night, you want to turn on the interior light so the officer will be able to see. You want to place your hands on the steering wheel until the officer can make a safe evaluation as she approaches your car. You want to avoid making any sudden or reaching movements that puts them on edge. So you want to stay still. Okay? You want to stay in your vehicle until and unless asked by the officer to get out of your car. Okay, so stay put until he asks you to get out the car. Then you get out the car. If you are carrying a weapon, advise the officer of the weapon and its location. And you want to always follow the officer's instructions. And that's verbatim off the Winston-Salem Police Department website. And I also want to just add another little tidbit here, is when you are traveling in another state, and I know sometimes you travel through states and you're on the interstate, so you're pretty good to go. But if you're traveling through in another state and you're traveling through town, there's city limits or whatever, you want to drive it generically as possible. And what I mean by that is every state, little jurisdiction have their own little things that little laws or whatever that they like to adhere to. Like in North Carolina and in some other states, but in North Carolina, you can turn right on red. But when I'm riding in another town, I'm hesitant to make a right on red because I don't know if that's legal in some other states. And a lot of times I ask my wife, with her, you think it's cool, we can make a right here? And if we don't know, if she doesn't know, because she traveled in different places, we won't make that right turn unless we see someone with that state tag of that state making that turn. I don't want to get pulled over somewhere because I'm doing something that's legal in my state that's not legal in yours. Like there's some places, like my wife grew up in Ohio, and she told me that there's certain intersections where you can make a left turn on red. You make a left turn on red in North Carolina, Bonnie and Fife would throw you under the jail. So you want to have an awareness of what the different traffic laws are in the states, different states that you're in. And if you don't know, you want to fall back on generic. Something that might be peculiar to your state might not hold water in another. So you want to be aware of that. Okay, so let's get to the videotape of Sandra Bland. Okay. Now, this is where the officer is traveling behind Sandra Bland. That's her white vehicle there. She's changing lanes, no signal. He pulls in, he changes lane behind her. And at this point, she's probably thinking, crap. So he pulls up behind her. And this is according to script. He's getting out his car, and he's going to walk her to her car and tell her why she stopped.
Time told the reason for your stop is you failed to signal your lane change. You got your driver's license insurance with you? What's wrong?
Okay. Now, so far, we are right on script. We're right on script here. So he pulls her over. He gets out of his car and walks up to hers and tells her why he pulled her over. That's part of the script. He says he needs her license and insurance information. That's part of the script. The next thing he says, what's wrong? That's not part of the script. Okay? Everything up to that point wasn't on script. So the first thing that he does to get off script is when he asks her what's wrong. And so if you find yourself in that situation and the officer does something that's outside the script, which is what's wrong, that should put you on notice now that this is a possibility that you could be getting out of script. Okay. And now if something's wrong with you where you are physically in some type of discomfort, this is the opportunity to tell the officer that, to put him aware of it, because now he's off script. And if you need him to be off script because something is physically wrong with you, then this is the time to tell it. But if you are just upset or pissed off, if he asks you what's wrong, and your goal is to make this stop as short as possible, and so the best response at this point in time is nothing. It's kind of like when somebody is see you on you walk past somebody on the street and they ask how you doing. They just want to hear fine. You don't want to hear anything outside of fine, even though it's how you doing. It's like, you ask me, so you give me a whole laundry list of things. Usually they just want you to say fine and they can move on. And so in this case, he's prompting her to get out of script. If the officer's prompting you to get out of script, you want to stay on script. So the correct response at this point in time is nothing. Okay. Okay. So she must have said something here. We can't really hear her, but he's not. You can see her moving around.
How long you been in Texas? Okay.
Okay, now he asks, how long have you been in Texas? Again, off script. And so you can answer that question, but you want to, in your mind, you can tell them, but in your mind, you want to see if you can steer this back on script, so you can best be on your way. And you have to catch cues from this guy as well. So you have to be in your P's and Q's. Sometimes if a driver, of officer stops a driver of another race, maybe they can have that banter. I've had banter before, but there's a difference between banter and someone heightening tension. If you find yourself a little bit upset, and maybe the officer, this was his way of trying to lessen tension. We don't know. And I also want to take this time to say this little bit here, because I want to be clear on a couple of things. A lot of people say, well, he pulled her over for, a BS reason. Here's the thing. The improper lane change, or changing the lane without putting on your signal, is on the books in Texas. And someone said, well, I didn't know that. Well, this was a teachable moment for the officer. He don't have anything else to do at this point in time. Someone makes an improper lane change. I can't really see what Sandra Bland's license plates are, but if they are from a different state, this would be his opportunity to pull her over and tell her why he pulled her over. Say, hey, pulling over without putting on your signal, that's against the law here in Texas. And if the officer doesn't tell you that, then you're not going to know. So, and again, everyone knows my viewpoint on the whole stop from my previous blog post. So I'm not getting into right or wrong. This is an objective look here, so that I can keep other people from having the same outcome that Sandra Bland had.
Do you have a driver's license? No, ma'am.
Okay, now, she handed him something before. She didn't hand him what he needed, because now he's asking, do you have a driver's license? Now, when you're in that situation and you've handed the officer something, and the officer says, don't you have XYZ, and you felt like you handed him XYZ, you don't say, it's not best to say, didn't I hand it to you? Because now that statement there is a tension heightener, because now you're questioning the officer's competence. So the best way to answer that question is, your best response is, oh, I thought I handed it to you. Because when you say, I thought I handed it to you, a lot of times what someone is going to do is they're going to double check, right? Even though they know they don't have it. But when you say, oh, I thought I handed it to you, and he'll double check. But if your response is, didn't I give it to you? Puts the person on a little edge. Okay? So just little slight things like that. A little twist of the term. So if you find yourself in that, if you handed it to him and he overlooked it, and you handed it to him, and say, oh, I thought I gave it to you. You're not not gonna lose your manhood saying something like that, or your womanhood saying something like that. A lot of times it draws them back to look again. But in this case, the driver actually did not give him what he needed. So now she hands him what he needs. He's looking through it.
Where are you headed to now?
Okay, now he's small talk. Where you headed to now? It's off script, but there's nothing wrong with it. You just tell him where you headed. And a lot of that for an officer, this is another thing that you have to be aware of as well. An officer really doesn't do anything without a little reasoning behind it. So what might be small talk for you, for him, he's really trying to size you up, because whenever they pull people over, they really don't know what they have at this point. And so once you give an officer a reason to pull you over, he's worth, and for something that you feel is a bold, if you put yourself in the officer's shoes here, what great story to be able to tell your buddies back at the station that you pull somebody over on a improper lane change, and it turns out that they had just robbed a bank. So they're going to ask you some of those questions, because at this point is to be able to stay in your car and go on about your business. That's what you should be thinking about while you're in that car and he's running back here in his car. Now, if you are one of our young brothers who you know that you got a warrant for your arrest, and you hadn't paid some child support, you feel that's going to be on the system, and you're thinking, man, I should take off. Don't take off. He has your license. He has your license plate. And unless that's a stolen car, he's going to get you. So now you have to start getting yourself together to responsibly handle whatever might come up to you. And sometimes something that he might find is arrestable offense, and that sounds bad, but they're going to catch you sooner or later. So the best thing there is if he comes back with, oh, we got a couple warrants for your arrest, go ahead and get that taken care of. Don't add eluding police and all that other stuff to the record and assaulting a police officer. You don't want to have all that added to your record, okay? But if you're a driver like Sandra, you know that there's nothing on your record, no outstanding warrants, nothing, everything's good to go. And your goal is to get from this situation to you and be on your merry way. So finally, let's see, and we're about 6 minutes. We're about 5 or 6 minutes into this. So she hadn't really been there that long up to this point. A little longer in the car than you want to. That usually come back a lot quicker. He could have had some computer problems or something. Maybe he doesn't have anything to do. But we're still under 7 minutes at this point, believe it or not. Okay, so you in time, taking deep breaths, calming yourself down. You know, we're still under 8 minutes here. And we're a little bit longer than that because I've actually paused this and broke it. But she's been here under 8 minutes so far. So we're still sort of waiting for the officer to return. And there's nothing you can do now but sit and wait. But you want to have yourself calm. You want to have your hands on the steering wheel so he can see him when he eventually gets out of his car. Okay, so now he gets out of the car, approaches her.
Okay, man. You okay?
I'm waiting on you. This is your job. I'm waiting on you. Whatever you want.
Oh, you seem very irritated.
Okay, we kind of spilled into, we seemed very irritated. But let's go back to this. Now, your objective, let me tell you what your objective is. Your objective is to get away from here as quickly as possible. You want to be on your very way. And you're sitting in the car, you feel you're being pulled over unjustly. I've been there. Okay? Now, when he comes back to your car, and he asks if you're okay. I'm waiting on you is combative. You know, if you want to go into the next step. So if you want to move on, and again, I'm not going back and saying Sandra's right or Sandra's wrong. This not about Sandra. This is about you. If you find yourself in this situation, this is about how can you get to the next step. So he comes up to your car. When he says, are you okay? At this point, again, it's generic. Just say yes, because all you want is your ticket, and you want to be on to the next step. But when you say anything other than that, you're going to prolong the situation. So this was an opportunity for Sandra to say one thing. This would be an opportunity for you to say one thing, which is, yes, I'm okay, or a little upset. You can say that. I'm a little upset. Okay, and then you can move on. So let's listen a little more.
I am. I really am. I feel like these traffic. Well, I'm getting tickets for. I was getting out of your way. You were speeding up, tailing me. So I move over and you stop me. So yeah, I am a little irritated, but that doesn't stop you from giving me a ticket. So.
Are you done?
You asked me what.
Okay. Now, so you got an opportunity to get everything out. So this is you. You couldn't help yourself. It's well within your right to say something. So you said your piece. Because a lot of times that's how we want to do is say our piece. So in this situation, Sandra got a chance to say her piece. I'm telling you, if you're in this situation in the future, if you want to get on to the next step, wait to say your piece in court. But if you do say your piece right there, which is well within your right, listen to the response from the officer. Because sometimes you can say your piece and the officer would be sympathetic to that. But if the officer says, are you done? That should give you indication that he doesn't care about your piece. Because you don't ask, are you done, when somebody is finished talking, because you know they're done, unless you weren't listening. And so when he said, are you done, it was clear either he wasn't listening to her or he didn't care what she just said. So he was just waiting for her mouth to stop moving. And if you're in Sandra's situation, you have got to recognize that cue. You said your piece. He doesn't care about it. Move on. And so we caught just on the heels of that.
Oh, and I told you. Okay. So now I'm done, yeah.
And so now I'm done, yeah, is what she said. And not helpful. All right. So now he is on the defensive at this point. Now he has to be a little more professional. You want your cops to be, your officer to be a little more professional, but you can't bank on that. Do you want to be right or do you want to go home? Is what you got to ask yourself. Should you find yourself in this situation? Do you want to be right or do you want to go home?
You mind putting out your cigarette, please? Don't mind.
Okay. Now, with the cigarette part, again, he's off script, and as you watch the tape, you can see he's barreling up for a fight. You know, he's already putting his stuff together for a fight.
I'm in my car while I put out my cigarette.
Well, you can step on out now.
I don't have to step out of my car.
Step out.
Okay. Now we don't really need to see any more of that, because now we're off script. You know, once we got to the cigarette part, we're off script, and you guys seen the rest. So what I was trying to do here is show that even though I believe in the Sandra Bland incident, the officer could have been a little more professional and got Sandra to move on her way. If you find yourself in that same situation in the future, there is something that you can do if your goal is to go home and to move to the next step. And so hopefully you are able to see my point, that there's points. If you find yourself in the same situation that Sandra found herself in, there are spots where you can say what you need to say, but get yourself so you can go home. If you go to my part 1 of Monday Morning Quarterback, I've shown you where I've been in that exact same situation. And like I said, sometimes I've gotten a ticket, sometimes I didn't, but I've never been pulled out my car. I've been asked to get out my car. Officer said he wanted to check my trunk, and I didn't have anything in there. I didn't have to let him check it, but I didn't have anything in there. It cost me another 30 seconds. But the whole stop lasted less than 7 minutes. So if your goal is to go home, then you will look at the points I'm making here and make your adjustments should you find yourself in the same situation that Sandra Bland found herself. Because I want you guys to continue breathing. Okay? Okay.